All right, I think we're all in here. Um, Let me scoot out a little bit. Everyone good? All right, we're good. We're good. Hey, how y'all liking it so far? Everybody out there, it's been good? Good. All right, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down the line. I want you to talk a little bit about your session, well, about a little bit about who you are, and a little bit about your session.
How y'all doing? My name is Keanis Williams. I go by Key. A little bit about me, just a country boy from East Texas living in Austin. But I'm really big into the health and wellness space. I got into the fatherhood space because of Josh and Isaac with the IDAS program with the Housing Authority. And so now I kind of do a lot of faith engagement and health and wellness with the Black Men's Health Clinic. Outside of that, my session today was about redefining health and habits. And so we just talked about a lot about how, as a man, your habits and the way you take care of yourself is what's ultimately going to affect your lineage and your legacy going forward, especially when it comes to your kids and your family. And that we want to take the opportunity to invest in our health rather than invest in the things outside of our health that can actually make our health bad, right? So just taking time to take care of yourself.
Wait, can you be country and from Austin at the same time?
Yes.
I guess I'm from the city of Austin. I'm not really a country guy, but no, born and raised Austin, Texas. I am Kevin Overton, had not a licensed professional counselor associate here. Working in Texas, I work with families, couples, individuals, young, old, you name it. I wear a couple of hats in that space. One, I have a private practice counseling for us, where I'm very boastful that I want to have a practice that is available and open to us, people who look like me. I don't have a niche per se, but I definitely love working with Black and brown men in particular. Also, I work at a place called Harvest Trauma Recovery Center. If you know Michael Lofton in the African American Youth Harvest Foundation, we are connected to that building essentially, and we do a lot of work with some victims of violence. We have truancy cases. We have anyone. Their therapy is free. Just FYI, it's a quick plug. I'm also a project officer for the D. Wood Foundation, where we do a lot of peer support as well. The session today, we talked a lot about. My hope was really to just bring conversation and make conversations around relationships not scary for us as men. Usually, again, I use the word today in a different way, but usually even that word relationships is also weaponized, kind of used to sort of maybe harm or maybe not sort of be beneficial or helpful or healthy for men. So we talked about that. Just really kind of uncover some of those shadows that we have experienced before in relationships, but also sort of shed some light on how we can sort of navigate that and move through it.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Perry. I'm a certified life coach. I do have a couple of different specialties, but overall, my passion is to speak to brown and Black men too. I think one of the spaces that is really difficult for us is to be able to understand ourselves and understanding why we move the way that we move and why we think the way that we think. And my passion is to help men change that perspective, give them a different idea, give them a different way to look, so then we can now change what we're doing, because some things are worth changing. And that's up to you. Today, my breakout session was speaking about faith versus fear. And again, same concept. I wanted to give a different perspective. I wanted to, we spoke about being positive thinking, giving yourself affirmations, making sure that we are not looking at the same things, staying in that cave that we stay in. And it's so cliche to do those things, but that's not where we need to be. And that's what we spoke about today. Thank you.
My name is Quentin Fisher. Pass your mic down.
My name is Quentin Fisher. I got into the space a couple years back because I wanted to change my life. Got tired of hearing how men were portrayed in life. I became a father. Now I'm a father of two. And so I wanted to be different than what I was raised. In my sphere of professional life, I have 20 years of customer service, and utilizing mental health has helped me become a better leader. I have coached. I have I had a show on the internet with Gentleman Squad Gaming, and I utilized the things I've learned in the Black Men's Mental Health Group that I also help sometimes facilitate and to be better men. And that's why I'm here. Didn't have a panel, I didn't have a session, but I'm on the panel to answer questions for you guys out there.
My name is Daryl Merriweather. I do academic advising here at Austin Community College during the day, and by night I'm a fatherhood specialist with the Man in Me. And I have a passion for the constructs of social and emotional learning, so that's self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship building, and responsible decision-making. And today our session was about boundaries for a balanced life. And we talked about those things, whether that's mental, emotional, physical, setting those things in place that we want to make sure that is acceptable and not acceptable so that we can have a well-balanced life as men.
Wonderful. Daryl, you've got the mic, so I want you to hold on to it. I want to ask this question. How, you work as a fatherhood specialist with the Man in Me, and you're working with students all the time. How have misconceptions about masculinity and manhood shaped your decisions and influenced the choices of men in your family and community? So based on what you've seen, we've been talking all day about shadows. Shadow figures of a man, how are those impacting the community as you see it? How is that impacting fathers and dads as they come across your path?
For me, I'm just going to take this as a personal kind of opportunity to share that. It impacted me very, very deeply because those shadows that I saw were things that I thought was a reality in which I was supposed to be as a man, right? So thinking about my session, I thought as a man growing up, seeing other people grow up as men, that there were no boundaries, right? I thought everything was acceptable when it came to what I saw in life. So when I realized that I stepped outside of that and saw things for what they really were, or having that exposure, I realized that, wait a minute, I do need to set up some things to kind of protect me as a well-being, as for my well-being and as a man. And I thought about ways in which I can do that. So that misconception really kind of threw me for a curve as I grew older, as I learned more about life as a man. And then I used these things that we do today, whether that's at ACC or with the Man in Me, to set up those boundaries to kind of help me facilitate the life that I want to live and navigate through these challenges that I face to become that person that I want to be as a man in society today.
Love it. Kevin, you're a therapist. Talk to me about limiting beliefs that people have in regards to masculinity or in regards to just growth in general, and how do these limiting beliefs hinder our growth?
A couple of things come up. Maybe, this idea that based on what I saw growing up, I may not be good enough. I'm not masculine enough. I'm a quitter. I quit football. I didn't quit football. I didn't do it in my senior year. I had enough of it. It was fun. It ran its course. But I thought I was a quitter, or I was labeled as a quitter. And obviously, I was fearful. My mom had a couple of different relationships, but none of them sort of offered the gift of what manhood looked like, or should look like, or how to do manhood in America. And so I felt fear then that, okay, when I grow older, that would be a hindrance, that would be a hurdle that I couldn't jump over. And I just think that through that, then, they sort of, one, don't allow you to fully be your authentic self growing up, or just in general. It doesn't allow you to really feel safe or secure or competent that you could do relationships better or different than what you've seen before. I think it can also limit you that, all those beliefs that I would have created, then I would stay stuck and not grow beyond kind of what's possible. But then again, that line of possibility is kind of for me to make up for myself. But again, if I don't have that exposure or that understanding or that confidence to sort of test different things or waters, if you will, then I'll just kind of stifle my own growth just in and of itself. So I think beliefs and values and experiences or exposure or not exposure can sort of like restrict our ability to sort of conquer fears that we had, or change direction or trajectories about what the possibilities of manhood is or could be or could look like, essentially.
Very good. Ron, you had a session called Faith versus Fear. That's a wild topic to tackle. What are some highlights that came out of your session that you think would be valuable to share to the rest of the group?
I think we had a nice spirited discussion in our group. I'll say that limiting beliefs is definitely something that holds us back. If we don't believe in ourselves, it's very difficult to get out of the ditch that we dug with non-believing, which leads you to having fear of something which holds you back, which brings you to the limiting belief. So if you continue to dig that ditch and don't believe or don't have a good support system around you to help you or are doing positive things or not even reaffirming yourself, affirmations are great, right? And men generally don't do this.
What's an example of an affirmation? Just for, I was reading something the other day. It's like affirmations, and I was like, I think I knew what it meant,
Right.
but I wasn't for sure. Like, so what do you mean by that when you talk about affirmations?
So, affirmations is basically, it's positive talk, but it has to be powerful though. You have to understand what you're saying, and it has to be different than what it is that you just say every day. You can go in a mirror every day and think, I'm handsome today, I look good today, right? But do you really feel like that? If somebody came to you and said, I don't really like this, are you gonna be thrown off your axis? You told yourself this morning that you were good. How powerful was that affirmation for you? So not only do you have to just say that, you have to believe that, and it needs to be strong. And you should look in the mirror so you can see what you're saying. You can see how you mean it. Everything matters. What you think, what you say, how your body position to it. It really, really matters to what you're gonna do throughout your day. And as we know, when we walk out that door, there's 100 different things that can knock you down, 100 different ones. But you have to have that strong belief, not having fear that somebody's gonna knock you off your axis, not knock you out of your square, and you have to have enough faith to understand, yes, I am. Whatever it is that you wanna say. Yes, I am worth this. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I do belong here. Those are very powerful, and that's something that we need to be able to say to ourselves, but it needs to be strong though.
Sure, go ahead.
I think affirmation, so just thinking about myself as a young black boy, and as we're younger, validations from like a father or a caregiver, all of that is important. And that validation, that really affects the trajectory of our lives. So not having that, it's important to create those affirmations as we're older, to kind of rewire what voices we're listening to, what thoughts we're having, because I think you're right. Our thoughts determine how we feel, which determines how we behave. And so those affirmations, those positive, that self-talk someone said is super duper helpful and impactful, that affects your trajectory.
Love it.
I will add to.
Oh, okay.
I will add to that, to go off of that, sorry. But I will add to that too, what happens in your childhood matters, right? Who was giving you information? Who was feeding you? Were they feeding you positive? Now that you are old enough to understand what that was, that can't be a limiting thing either if it's negative.
Right.
It needs to be positive. You are now old enough to make a choice.
Right.
When you make that choice has to be you.
Okay, we're staying on that subject, Quentin. I want you to talk about a moment when you had to confront a limiting belief. How did that experience redefine your understanding of authenticity and your role in your family? And how did that redefine you, confronting a limiting belief?
I think back to when I became a father and trying to feel the limiting beliefs is like, because my dad wasn't around. My dad was a drug addict for years. He was also a people-pleasing workaholic, and all of that played into each other. And I started to feel like I had to do that. I had to, well, not use drugs, but work. And if I didn't work, if I didn't like make enough money, I wasn't good enough. But being a provider is more than just the money you bring in. I had two young men who the universe sent me two boys. And in that thinking, it sent me two versions of myself to re-love and to learn how to love myself. to overcome that, I poured into how I was loving them and turned it into how I was loving me. I can take off the days from work. I can advocate for myself. I can stop being trapped in this box of being a good man and being a good man with boundaries, because we get into this thing of like, I'm a good person, so I can't advocate for myself. And that's false, because the world wants you to think that you're a good person. You're not going to speak up for yourself. And there's a whole lot of good people who are stuck in places that they can't get out of because they're scared to say, stop. I want to be with my family. I want to go on this trip. I want to be sick, and heal myself. So that was that was my example of the limiting belief. And yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you for that. Keanis, I'm gonna ask you a really hard question. I would be the one to do that. And I'm just coming with it. It's beautiful. Keanis comes from a small town. Keanis went and played football. And so Keanis has seen like the definitions of masculinity from small town to the definitions of masculinity that get placed in front of you whenever you experience the limelight and the glitz and the glamour. How does a person navigate the shadows that are being thrown in front of you to really kind of find your own identity? And not just that, but find an identity that's worth giving to your children, because now you've got children that you're looking after. And so you've got the shadows that were in small town, but then you've got shadows that were in the big glitz and glamour, and they're both shadows, different shadows probably. Talk about that.
It's feel like my therapy sessions on Fridays. Well, yeah, so to get a context of coming from a small town is where there's not a lot of opportunity. There's not a lot of things you can do. Like my dad's been working the same job for 30 years. My mom has been a CNA, not CNA, been a laundry lady for a nursing home my whole entire life. My grandmother cleaned houses. My grandpa raised dogs and raised horses. And so you don't really see a lot of opportunity. But when you see on TV the people that make the money, the people that get to enjoy life, they're usually athletes or musicians. And then you don't really have a lot of people in your hometown pushing you and telling you that you can, because deep down, I've said this before in one of our IDAS meetings, that if I had to go back and do it again, I would have been an archaeologist. I like looking at dead bones and looking at how structures were built, but nobody was pushing me to do that. It was always, man, you're gonna be the one to make it. You're gonna be the one to put us on the map. You're the football guy. You follow in your dad's footsteps, but he didn't make it, but you're gonna be the one. You got family members and that have never said a word to you coming up to you saying, hey, remember me when you get there. And there's a pressure to put on your back when you're like 10 years old and you're playing Little League football and you're dominating all these different things, but I'm being fueled by my anger and this pressure to perform, that when I finally get to the point of like, I'm a senior in high school and the scholarship offers aren't coming. The colleges aren't calling. You're from a small town because now they're saying you're good, but your competition is bad, so we don't want to give you a scholarship because we haven't seen you play against somebody better than you. So now you're going through these back and forth. So then I go to a small Division III school, and it's like I'm not even enjoying the sport because I'm trying to prove to everybody else that I can do it. I'm trying to prove to everybody else that I'm not washed up, or I'm gonna be the one to put my city on my back. And once I gave up football, which I'm to this day just now realizing that it's not my identity, I'm finally at peace. And the fact that I'm at peace with it is now coming up in how I love my son, who wants to play football because daddy played football, but I'm like, you don't have to. You can go be whatever you want to be. You ain't got, my dad never pressured me to play football. It was my city that pressured me to play football. And because I saw my parents struggling financially all the time, that was my way of saying, I'm gonna take care of y'all, I got y'all. But for a child at 10 years old to put on his back and carry that is a lot of weight. If you look at any of my papers that I wrote when I was a younger person, and they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? It wasn't archaeologist. I want to go to the NFL. And then when the NFL don't come, and you deal with the politics and the struggles I put my body on the line. I'm 29, but I feel like I'm 40, right? And for my son, I don't want him to go through that. I don't want him to feel like, that's why I work, like, I can be a workaholic because that's all I saw from the men is workaholics. But also, I would rather now take a job that pays less so I can be home with my son so I can cultivate what he wants to do. Same with my daughter, right? And so, but coming from those shadows of small town, glitz and glamour, being an athlete, that literally destroyed my identity. And now that I'm a husband, that's one of the biggest issues me and my wife run into is because I don't know how to decipher between hard work and relaxation. I've been an athlete my whole life, so everything for me is structured. I knew when I was gonna eat. I knew when I was gonna work out. I knew when I was gonna go to sleep. I knew when I was gonna practice. Almost like military style. So now you're an adult and you don't have that structure, and now it's kid wakes up at 2 a.m, wife needs you to pick up this, kid does that, job does this. I freak out because now I don't know how to handle that because my identity has been so stuck in football for so long. My wife told me this not too long. She said, you act like you can't hear nothing if it's not a playbook. And it's a fact. And I had to sit with myself in that. Sometimes, and I've talked to Josh and Isaac about this, sometimes if I don't put it in a football terminology, I don't understand it. And that's good and bad. One, I know how to systemize things, but two, I don't have the coping skills to have a normal conversation without relating it back to something that literally was my identity for almost 25 years. So to answer your question, the way I beat that is, like you said, give myself grace. And I also give myself the opportunity to say, like I tell my wife, you're growing with me the entire time. Like you're literally watching me destructuralize my entire life. So give me grace while I give myself grace. And like setting up those boundaries of, if I do make a mistake, if you play sports, you mess up, it's your fault. They always say, oh, it's your fault. You missed a play, you busted a play, it's your fault. Now it's like, it's not my fault, I'm still learning. So I kind of just, like I said, in that space now is learning to love myself in a way of now I'm trying to be that archaeologist. You see what I'm saying? Like now I'm sitting watching documentaries instead of watching football games. Like I'm trying to be those things that I never had the opportunity to be, and I'm giving myself grace to know like this is a new space in my life.
That's good. Hey, pass the mic down to Daryl real quick.
In the football term, key, pass, Mike.
We cool, right, Daryl?
I'll let you say that.
Listen, I've had the honor of facilitating a couple of groups with Daryl back to back, and so I've got to know Daryl a little bit. Here's my question for you, Daryl. I'm looking around the room. Most of us in here are upwards of 30, maybe. Someone coughing. All right.
Let's just do a poll, Josh.
You know
Just do a
saying?
poll. Just put your.
Some of us are. Oh yeah, right. Some of us here are not Keanis and 29.
Oh, Keanu said he 40. He said he 40.
Well, I am. 43, whatever. I heard you say something one time about having to, and I mentioned this earlier in my opening session about having to recreate yourself, because I've had to do that a couple of times in my life, recreate myself. How have you had to recreate yourself? And taking into account the idea of the shadows versus walking out of the cave, what was that for you? What was that process for you of recreating yourself into becoming the Daryl that you are today? And what type of courage did it take to face those shadows that were hindering that transition?
Now, Josh, remember, I'm recreating, so I need one question at a time. Right? Just one question.
Sorry.
So it's been difficult, right? So that recreating is still happening as we speak. So to kind of take it back, yes, we do the cultivating fathers things together. So we talk about the little boy within, right? Understanding how to heal those wounds to become the man that you want to be. So looking at that growing up, thinking about those shadows, right? I saw men as just, again, as I mentioned earlier, having no boundaries. So I thought that I could just go out here and do anything and everything I wanted to do as I grew up as a man, and no consequence at all, right? Because I didn't see people getting in trouble for selling drugs or, committing crimes or things of that nature. But once I got older and I realized that that's not reality, I had to step back and start creating boundaries that was going to help me recreate the person that I wanted to become. So as I transitioned into that, that was difficult as well too, but I think it was an impactful part of my life which helped me kind of to understand the importance of accepting those things that will make me the man that I want to be, and kind of doing what you like to do is put that Heisman on that other stuff that I do not feel is acceptable, and helping me grow. So to bring that back around, man, it was difficult, but it was very much what I needed to become the man that I am today, which is one, self-aware, right? I cannot understand anything about life if I don't understand who I am, right? And that self-identity piece really helped me understand in our session today, right? We talked about boundaries. Does the boundary come first, or does the self-identity piece come first? And I had to realize that self-identity for me had to come first before I could set any boundary about who I wanted to recreate and become. So that whole piece was, it was tough, but it was something that I needed to transition into truth, right, about who I wanted to become. And that really helped me into becoming the person I am today. So that's the first part. What was the second part of the question?
I'm gonna switch up the second part. Say there's somebody in the audience right now, and they're at a stage in their life where they feel like, I've been this version of me for so long, but it's not benefiting me, but you're scared to take that leap to become somebody different, because ultimately you're dying to a lifestyle that's all you've known, and stepping out into something that you've never known before. Let's do this. Same question for everybody. I'm gonna start with you. What advice would you give that person? Or encouraging word?
I would say affirmations would be key for me. Tell yourself the truth about who you are, and stand firm on that, right? For me, that was a manifestation piece. I had to tell myself that, you know, I'm not like my dad, even though my dad was a good man, right? But he was, he had many homes, right? And I didn't want to be that sort of person. So I had to stand on that and say, if I want my identity to be something other than that, I had to not only speak that, but stand on that, and that helped me grow. So I would say just speak truth to yourself. That helps with self-awareness, and that's helped with self-identity. And once you can do that, then you can create those boundaries that you need to become the person that you want to be.
Quentin, same question.
I would say if you're on the boundary of overstepping and like to do something that you fear, like as cliches as sounds, do it. Think of yourself as the sun in your universe. Every day the sun shines regardless of on the earth, you know, all the time. The sun don't never stop shining for nobody. So take that leap of faith, you know, and do it for you, because you're doing it for yourself. Because if you do it for somebody else, then that's not authentic, you know? And fear's fine, but just do it. That's all I got.
Can you repeat the question?
So let me do this. So you're encouraging somebody who's having a problem with transition and change. What would that encouragement be? And then after this, we're going to take a detour and we're going to open it up to questions from the audience.
So the person is trying to change?
They're about to change. They want to change. They know they need to change, but they're scared to change. Change is scary. What do you tell that person?
Change is scary. Life is scary. What I would say is two things. One, just take one step. Just take one step. Every time that you have a question about whatever it is that you're doing, you don't have to know the answer to it. Just take the step. Watch what happens. Just see it. And you know what? Embrace that step. That's the second part. Embrace the step. If you like it, you like it. Go for it. Now, the next step doesn't feel that bad. If you don't like it, understand what you don't like, but still take the next step, because that step should not sidestep you. You should continue to keep going. So take your step.
He's in my playbook. Sorry, come up with a different one. I think a couple things. I love the do it scared idea, because I think, there's going to be many things in life that may be scary, but definitely do it scared. That's part of the process, I believe. But to come up with something different is two things. One, normalizing that change, recreation. That is scary, but it's also messy. It's uncomfortable. It's going to be different. It's going to be unknowing, if you will. And so I just think understanding all of that, just normalizing that for yourself, because that's part of the process, right? The second part of that is don't do it alone. If it is scary and it's restricting you and it's getting you stuck, that's data for me. That's not insurmountable, obviously. So do it scared, but don't do it alone. I mean, that's why we have supports Get someone in the room. This is what Man and Me is about, right? That's what this conference is about, networking. Or come see me. Therapy is also helpful to kind of help you overcome, or coaching, if you will, is also helpful to get out of your comfort zone, to push you beyond that next step.
All right, anybody have any questions? If you got a question, there's a mic right here. Got to be bold, though. Somebody's got something. Come on, don't be scared. There's, okay. All right.
We start passing the mic around up to, just go to them.
Right. There you go.
My question is, what life skills have you found essential in teaching your children responsibility and leadership, and how do you model these behaviors?
Well, my one is back there. That's one I'm always doing discipline with. But I think the one thing that I've taught with discipline with my son is, because as my father taught me, was like, do it right so you don't have to do it again. With my son, it's something that I'm very trying to instill in him, is like, you don't have to do it right as long as you're trying, right? And so one thing I don't want to instill in my kids is that they don't try, right? So for him, it's like eliminating, like, not, if you mess up, but you tried. So for him, and trying to teach that into him, for this, even with discipline, it's like, okay, you messed up, what do you need to fix? Okay, we did. So if you're gonna clean your room, okay, cool, we cleaned it. This is not the standard. Okay, let's do it again. Cool, he keeps coming back. Daddy, I cleaned my room. Daddy, I cleaned my room. Yeah, but it's not the standard, but keep coming back. But I'm not condemning him that it's not clean. It's just like, this is what we need to do to get there. And I can kind of see that coming up in my kids now when they're in school, when they make a mistake on a test, or they make a mistake in the classroom. He doesn't get down on himself. He's like, okay, I didn't learn that, so I need to learn better. So I think that's one thing as a man that I want my son to know, is that just because you make a mistake doesn't mean you still can't get to your destination.
No kids, but I will say from a therapist perspective, a couple of things that come up for me is, I'm reading this book called Parenting from the Inside Out, and one of the things it talks about is working on our own stuff. Because a lot of times we parent out of our own trauma and our own fears, our own restrictions, and so the more we can loosen some of that up, then maybe we are able to have better mindsight, better flexible responses to our children, better presence, better joy, but also just as a child, something I hope to instill is just the idea that as a man I also have emotions, I can be vulnerable, and kind of role model in a safe container for them ultimately, that you can express yourself however you want to.
You just took my playbook. You just did that. I want to echo a little bit of both. I think being transparent, letting your child know that you might not know that. I think letting them understand that you are human, that there's a different component of you just not being, because as a kid, you are super dad, you are super mom, you are everything. And then there's a point in there where they find out you don't know everything. And now you got to let them know we can learn that. We can learn that, because that's the question was, how do you influence things with your children? For me, my children teach me everything that I want to know. I ask them, we talk it through, we walk it through. It's communication, it's understanding, it's no judgment, it's safe. And I let them know, just like they let me know, because now kids are way more vulnerable and way more emotional, and I let them know, guess what? I got feelings too. So when you speaking, learn how to speak. This is how this is how we do this. So you're giving them tools, and that's something that I do. So that's the answer for me, is tools. You give them all the tools that you could give them, right? You give them every tool that you got. Then you pass it off. When you pass it off, it's not your job now. Let them learn how to use the tools and pick out those tools. You support them, and you can tell them, hey, don't hammer a screwdriver. Don't try to screw something with a hammer. But you can give it to them and let them go. But if you know what you did, then they can do it too. You can trust that.
All right, let me see. Do we have any other questions? Come on. Go ahead, brother.
While he's coming up, I would say a tool for me is, I'm big on social emotional learning, right? And that just allows us to develop those skills or use those tools that we need to build healthy relationships. And the healthy relationship that I want my kids to understand is, it starts with that healthy relationship with yourself, right? So self-awareness, social awareness, regulating your emotions, learning how to build relationships, that helps make you understand the decisions that you will make in life too, right? So that's one thing that I try to teach my kids is, through social emotional learning, how to build a healthy relationship first within yourself, and then that can cultivate to others as well.
Go ahead.
We talk a lot about things that we don't want to do that's like our parents, and that's understandable. But how do you teach your child to not actually try to be like you, even though you have done the work? Like you're doing the work to put yourself as being, emotionally intelligent and all these things. How do you still teach your child to still be their own self with that? That make sense?
Oh, can I jump out? Oops, knocked it over. We are designed to mimic whatever example is placed in front of us. So we're gonna mimic our parents. We're gonna mimic the people that we surround ourselves with. We're gonna mimic the people that we give space into our life. That's just the way that we're designed. The difference is that we have to give, I'll use myself for example. Well, you cannot limit yourself to just one block per se. So exposure to different tools, because what's gonna happen is if my children or if my people only get their information from me, they're gonna mimic Josh. That's what's gonna happen. So what I need to do is I need to broaden my net to where it's not just what my parents gave me. It's my parents and my mentor. It's my parents, my mentor, and my coach. It's my parents, my mentor, my coach, and my teachers. My parent, my mentor, my coach, my teachers, and my friends. So now that I'm giving myself a bunch of, like he said, tools to choose from, and then as a parent or a mentor, my job is to help a person figure out kind of what tools, okay, so look at this tool and look at that thing. So you're gonna need this tool for that thing. Well, you can try it with that and see if that works, but this tool might work better. And so what you're doing is it's this a kaleidoscope where you got all those little broken pieces of glass that come together. And it's not the fact that it's a bunch of broken pieces of glass together, it's what you do to shift those broken pieces of glass to create a perspective. And so I think the more you bring in, the more tools and the more information you bring, because again, people are gonna mimic the closest model to them. And so it becomes incumbent upon us as the closest model to a person to introduce them to and expose them to more things and show them, see how I might have done it this way, but see how they did it that way, and so how they can shift that kaleidoscope to where they can get their own individualized perspective. Cool, everybody else? Go ahead. No, I'm running through time. Go ahead, man. They can jump on the other ones. I got greedy with that one. Sorry.
I was having a fascinating conversation with a guy about finding your tribe, and I do believe that there's I don't want to say epidemic, but I'm gonna use that word because I can't come up with another one of male loneliness, and not having friendships. And I just wanted to hear from the panel, how did y'all find this place? What moment got you to find the man in me, this group, this organization, I just saw you. Oh, no, I was waiting at the main start. So yeah, I was just wondering, was there a turning point? Was there like, man, I got to do something?
I'll dig it in a little bit. As a man, I think you go through a lot of different changes, and men are not as social as women. We don't congregate like women congregate. They know how to do all of that. We just go, yeah, you like sports? Yep. All right, come on. Right, we best friends, right? And if we got two things that's similar, you can't separate us now, right? But we won't go out no more, right? We'll do whatever it is here. But I think it's a lot of what I forgot who just said it. I think it was you who said you have to start understanding yourself first, right? If you understand that you have things to do, things will come from that. So it's just like if you work out, right? So now it's not just that you work out, but if you work out at a gym that does community, there comes people that are doing similar things, then you could pick a person or two out of that. Now, if you have other things that you want to get into, go do those things. Say yes to those things because stuff comes out of that. I'll say this for myself personally. I moved from, I'm a New Yorker, right? But I lived in Las Vegas for 10 years and then I got here. So getting here, I'm starting to meet people that I want to meet. Doing that, I didn't know where that space was coming from. So I started getting into things that I enjoyed. I met people doing the things that I enjoy. And now they have become my tribe. If you're doing something that's positive that you feel good about, those people are doing something positive that's too. So you can connect better that way.
All right, we got 3 questions in 3 minutes. See how we can make this happen.
I'll make this real brief. I've heard a lot of beautiful things said here today, and I'm really moved and impressed. But my question is this. I hear about tools, working, building, changing. But my question is God any part of this tools or change or example? Is he in here anywhere in all this development? Because I have not heard that.
For me, yes, that is the center and focal point for my transformation. I heard a rapper once say that true religion is his true religion. God is my true religion. And that has been my tool, right? So once I understood how I can apply what I learned through the biblical constructs that I deal in with daily, that helped me build my foundation. And then I started building on top of that. So yes, to answer your question, yes, for me, that is my anchor right there that keeps me going and helps me find my tribe that I find with these brothers here within the Man in Me and everywhere else that I go out in life today. So yes.
Yeah, I can echo that as well. I'm very involved in the faith base, but my foundation is church. My foundation is God. And the one reason why I got into the fatherhood stuff, because I said it in my session today, is because if God is my father, and he's the ultimate version of what it looks like, then how do I become that and try to get to that, right? And so one thing that my mother-in-law told me was that my son, he doesn't understand the concept of God until he hits his consciousness. So when he looks at what God is, he's looking at me. So I have to become that version of God, not being God, but the version of God and through Jesus, so that he can see what that looks like. So when he gets older and makes his own decision, then he's making a decision for himself. And I have to be the example for that. So yes, that's rooted in everything that I do.
That's one more thing, and I know we gotta keep going. So 2 things about me personally. So first of all, God is my all in all. He is the author and finisher of my faith, and I'm rooted in church. I go to David Chapel if you're looking for a church, by the way. But I really do believe that he leads and guides me personally. I'm very spiritual. I used to be a worship leader in my church. But as a therapist, I see that people were coming to church believing with the same anxiety or depression or schizophrenia that we came into the building with. So we would cry, lift our hands in the worship experience, but we're still going home to loneliness and anxiety, right? And so I wanted to sort of change how that was working and happening. And so as a therapist, though, I can't always, I have to bracket sort of who I am for the sake of the other person, right? So I can't like project my values on them. I meet them where they are. So if you come with the scripture, hey, let's go. I'll go there with them, but basically. So I think if you don't hear it from me personally from this room, it's not that he's absent from Kevin. It's that everyone is not a Christian.
And I want to add that too. I wanted to say this for the person, and I believe too, but for the person that is just like church, everybody doesn't go to church. Everybody doesn't believe. Now, does it mean that they don't know? But if you just take a baseline of it, and I'm in therapy and a coach space too, you don't want to, you do bracketing. But if you speak and you're speaking kind, if you're speaking with joy, if you're speaking with all of the traits that come from the Bible, you're not without it. It's there. If you can hear it on a person when you hear and you feel that spirit on a person, whether they go or they don't. I just want to say that because I think that's important. I think that was a great question.
That's a good question.
It was.
Thank you for asking.
What advice would you give to a man in his early 20s trying to understand what it means to be an adult and be a better husband?
You don't have all the answers, and lean on the people. Find someone who does know the answers and lean on that. And also, too, be comfortable with disappointing people, because a lot of times we get locked into not disappointing folks that we overextend ourselves. Whatever choice we make, good or bad, we're going to disappoint somebody. You may get a promotion tomorrow, and somebody's going to be disappointed that you are making more money. So as an adult, you're going to deal with that. And when you make changes, there's going to be a certain level of loneliness of the people that you're leaving behind to level up into your next space, and you're going to have to deal with that as well.
Since he challenged us, Proverbs 3, 5, and 7, lean not on your own understanding. So maybe get in the Bible, get in wisdom, find the example for your life, essentially. And get around people who can help you role model to iron sharpens iron. Another scripture, since he's challenging us today, to think about. Again, I also said this earlier, we can't walk this life alone. So you have to kind of get some support, wisdom, coaching if you need to, or counseling, or with mentors, essentially.
Can I say something one more time, too, young man? Also, too, as an adult, what you see on the internet is a lie. Don't believe TikTok, don't believe Twitter. All of that stuff is meant to keep you down.
Shadows on the
Shadows.
wall.
They dancing big, and some shadows dance really bigger. So look, it's not true. All right.
Let me throw one more thing out there. Scripture verse: "Pride cometh before a fall." You wanna ensure your failure at anything? Approach it with a bunch of pride. If you want to ensure your success at something, be humble. Be humble enough to move, maneuver. Be humble enough to know when you're wrong. Be the first person to apologize when you mess up. Be the one that's going to stand in the gap when there's a lack going on. Be the person that's going to take that extra step. A lot of times in relationships where they fail is that, oh, I wasn't supposed to do that because that wasn't my job. Okay, you want to be the provider, you want to be the head of the household. It's your job. It might not be your job, but it's your responsibility to make sure it gets taken care of. And there's a difference between fault and responsibility. There are some things that might be my fault that weren't my responsibility, and there are some things that might not have been my fault, but were my responsibility. And so understanding the difference between that and navigating that and putting ego and pride to the side is going to put you in a position to be heard better and to hear better.
And there's no thing that says this is the right way, right? There's nothing that tells you how to be a husband. Nothing. There's nothing that tells you how to be a parent. There's nothing that tells you how to be a better man. But you know what that really is? That's your inner compass in yourself that says, I feel good about this, right? There's a confidence on you. And you get that when you go and get help. You get that when you go and get knowledge. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody. And when you continue, stay open. That's what I'll tell you. Stay open and be willing. Whatever that is. Open to hear it, willing to listen. Open to try it, willing to fail. It's fine. There's no mistake that nobody on earth has ever made that they can't get over. None. None. So go for it. You feel good? You feel good about the choice that you make? Go. You're a man. Be that man. Be that man. Go get it.
I'll end this with the Bible verse. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to an emotional reaction. It says anger in the book, but it means emotional reaction. I'm quicker to listen, I'm slower to speak, and I'm even slower to have an emotional reaction to what's happening for me. That'll save you a whole lot of drama and 911 calls. Don't do that. Go ahead.
I suppose my question would be, through all adversity or difficult times, dancing with shadows, stuff like that, how did you guys go about becoming better men of service, or not only for yourselves, but for your children, your wives, your families in general? What are some steps you guys took? Better men of service to your families.
I'll start. Go to therapy. Even as a therapist, I'm in therapy as well. I told my therapist I'm going to be his easiest client ever, but not until I start opening my mouth. Life for all of us. So again, because I know I can't walk this life alone, we are a communal people. We grow together, we live together. And so that's my one-line answer. Therapy has been helpful for me, just in my personal life, for sure.
I'll follow that up by saying, serve. Where's your heart at? Right? Wherever your heart is, go there. Right? If you love, like for us, we all love being able to give in this space, and this is what we're here for, then find that space and do that. Like give, just give. If you are in the space of gratitude, man, what comes back to you is amazing. And you gotta be able to give. And this is where in church, they tell you 100% tithing is a thing to it. If you don't understand it, that's why people say what they say. But when you do tithe, there is a thing about that. And man, it's nothing better than seeing what you do, how it comes back around. And you're not doing it for the look of it. You're doing it because it's on your heart to do.
And I'm gonna add to what Ron just talked about, maybe from a different perspective, but same sort of pathway, I became better at certain when I started to learn how to serve myself.
Yes.
Right? When I started
Yes.
taking care of myself, putting myself first, self-care for my own well-being, that's when I realized the importance of how I can do that for others. So that's what I would probably say for anybody that wants to kind of step into this sense of serving. Serve yourself first. See what that's like, right? And then you can probably find better ways to kind of do that for others as well.
I think for me, the way I kind of looked at it as being a young husband, young father, it was when I started looking at the whole purpose of being a man, we're trying to serve our families. But there's a sense of peace that doesn't always come with that. So when I started getting frustrated with not having peace, as I'm working all these hours, I'm doing all this stuff, my family gets what they want, but I'm not happy. And I got to the point where I started regretting my decisions. That's when I was kind of now I'm starting going down this self-care route. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why did I get married? Why did I have kids? Why did I take this job? And then it started to click in my head. It's like it's my duty and my responsibility to take care of those things. But if I can't enjoy it, what's the point? So then I started chasing self-care. Then it's like setting my own boundaries, finding out what I like and don't like, finding out how to communicate with my wife because I never had the opportunity to see my parents communicate with each other. Being able to give my son the space so that he can be who he needs to be as a man. Me and my wife will argue in front of my son so he knows what that looks like. But when we argue, we also have the ability to come back and say, okay, this was a disagreement. This is how we handled that. Because emotionally, I never saw that. So when I first got married, I was a hothead. And I was just losing it. But then it was but this is my wife. I love her. Why are we fighting? Why am I regretting getting married now just because we had a disagreement? So then I started going to therapy. Now I started tapping into all these things that was bothering me that I never said, that I never dealt with. So now I'm on this self-care thing. Now I can communicate with my wife. I'm overstimulated right now. We can't have this conversation. But when I do come back and have this conversation, now I can say, you know what? I should have took the trash out. And now you got to take the trash out because I'm not at home. Right? So it's those little things like that. But once you find out what you want, you'll start you make it a priority because it's yourself now. Right? So I think that's the best way to go is kind of figure out what you want and what you need, and then everything else will fall into place.
Can I piggyback real quick? Real quick. What everyone's saying is true. And also, too, is be intentional what you're trying to do and then realize the impact that is going to have. Keanu just said his intention was with arguing with his wife is to know that this is what the argument's about, and then we know the impact on how it's going to affect us. The intention was to get a better understanding and come back and realize, and he apologized too, that, hey, I should have did that. Be intentional with your self-care and know that if you're intentional with your self-care, that impacts your overall health, which allows you to show up better for your family. You know, our parents weren't intentional. I'm speaking for myself. My mom wasn't intentional with her self-care, which led to anger, which led to her yelling at the kids, and that impacted us in a negative light. If she was more intentional with her, with the tools she had, bless her heart, the impact would have been way different and more loving. So be intentional with everything you go and do in life.
All right, last question.
Okay, so Josh, you'd mentioned earlier about how in the movie Neo comments that his eyes hurt, and it's because he'd never used them before. And so my question to the panel is, where have there been instances where seeing past a shadow or past an illusion has revealed a weakness in yourself? What weaknesses have you discovered through your journeys of transformation, and what have y'all done to strengthen yourselves to sort of account for these weaknesses that have come from being illusioned or not being fully aware of how to go about being a man? Can any of y'all speak to?
Man, who invited you to this?
Is this the right company?
Asking these hard questions. I said last one, not hard one. No, Diddy. All right.
I'll go. Can I go first?
Go ahead.
The weakness, the shadow I saw was I don't communicate as effectively as I thought I did. I learned that in my marriage. I learned that with my kids. I learned that in my professional life. A lot of times I would communicate something and I wasn't intentional with it. And so things didn't get done the way I wanted them to do. And so I ended up being angry because in my mind, if I say it, I assume everyone knows what to do. And learning that weakness, I had to seek out books, seek out, in my therapy session, how can I communicate better? Seeking out mentorship, how can I communicate better on a professional level, you know. So that was my weakness I figured out. Communication was terrible, but it's getting better.
For me, it was pride. Realizing that sometimes that strength that you the provider, the top dog, like it's your duty and your responsibility can be masked as pride. And so when my eyes were open was that, like Josh said, pride comes before the fall and destruction. When I got to the point where I was like, it's my duty, I have to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, a lot of things went bad. And then I kind of got to that point where it was like, why don't you just step back? That's where my faith kicked in, because I had to like take some stuff off my shoulder because I'm trying to carry so much that in my head is what's being a man is, but in actuality it's pride. Then I started having an ego battle. Now I'm battling between my ego, my pride, my emotions. I'm an emotional dude. Then I got, it's just a lot of things. But when I realized that it's my pride that's causing that, then that's when I took that step back. Was like, you know what? I'm not as of a good person as I thought I was. I'm not as this, like I said, that's come from that football background of being the guy. Like that caused a lot of problems for me. So it actually built my pride up as well. So once I decided to say death to myself, in a sense of like that's still a form of self-care, that I like killed my pride, that's when things started to lighten up for me and I can actually see better, but also it changed the way I respond, how I act to people. Because now it's more, I try my best to be more of a humble person rather than a prideful person.
I would just say accountability. I know we don't have much time, but just accountability would be for me.
And really quick, I think for me, I didn't repair well. I would shoot to kill. I really knew the value and power that I hold in situations, but I just forgot that repair is also important. So when I learned that really what I'm called to do is conflict in love, and not conflict to kill someone with my words and actions and behaviors, and that really changed the entire game for me, and I really loved them better and conflict better through that. But also the piece that was missing is, okay, we did all this arguing, we yelled, we fought, we screamed, we punched, whatever, not call 911. But the point is that the repair is the most important thing about all of that. So that was important to me.
I had a distorted view of what love looked like. And especially as a man, it was all of the things that we grew up with. This is how it was supposed to be. You're a man this way and that way. So then when I got into a marriage, I thought marriage was like that. And I thought I was doing that. I thought love looked like that. And I did that with my wife. I did that with my children. I did that with everybody. And then I had a very rude awakening. And that rude awakening was very personal. And immediately, I went to therapy. Immediately, right after that, because I knew the difference between a therapist and a coach, so I needed accountability to it. And even though I needed to understand where it came from, because that's also what I did too. I found out where it came from. That's why I can speak to it now to say, I know that I didn't understand what love looked like. And so I didn't give love correctly. I didn't receive love correctly. I didn't blame anybody for it. I just understood it. But then I started to now get better at that and have the tools to learn how to. And now that turned into me not just being a person that understands that. I now want to give kindness and I want to receive kindness. I know the difference now between being nice, being kind, and love. There's a difference, and they all are very powerful. But if you don't understand which space you're supposed to be in, how can you give it? You can't receive it. And it's really, really an interesting space to learn and to hear, what that is, to know the distinction of all of those things.
Wow, it's been great. I'm going to answer your question and then I'm going to sit down. The one muscle I realized I was weak at was forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of those muscles, when you try it out for the first time, it hurts like hell and it keeps hurting, but you got to keep doing it on purpose, because the only way you get good at it is by deciding to do it regardless of the other person's response or reaction to it. It's a decision you make inside yourself before they do anything that makes you feel like they deserve it. You forgive for you. And with that, I'd like to say thank you to our panel. We're going to go ahead and transition now. We're going to get out of the way, and y'all get ready.